Hi everyone, this is Purna. We are continuing ReactJS training sessions, and today we are going to talk about props in details. Here is the table of content for the sessions today. We'll cover the property introductions, then we'll use the properties in React components, then properties validations, and we'll handle the default value for the properties. So what is props? So props stands for the properties. Props are argument passed into React component via HTML attributes, and props are read only basically. So once you set the props, you cannot edit inside the component. And props are a kind of a global variable, object or function. These are the things we can pass. And here is one example of properties. So you can see, right, the props that we can access, and how we are using these props, like props.name. So name is the properties that we are passing to this employee component, and how we are passing the properties here. You can see, right, while accessing that employee component, we are passing a HTML attribute called name, and there we are passing the values called XYZ. So when you will render this component, you will see it will print hello, my name is XYZ. Let's come to the VS Code and we'll see. Here is a component called employee that you can see, right, I'm expecting a props.name, and I have passed a properties called name while using that component, right? So this is how my component looks like after render, right? So you can see this XYZ is something a dynamic values which render based on the properties which we are passing. So also we can access this properties without using props keyword also. So let me destruct it, like I'm just accessing as a properties name directly. So in that case, you don't need to use props.name, right? So if I'll replace the component here, you can see that is the same things it is coming. So let me change some other values here. Okay, so this is how we can access the properties in component. Okay, so what is properties validation basically? So property validation is required to ensure the data passed as props to the component with correct format or data type. So basically the properties which we expect in the component is pre-decided, and also we can define that what kind of data that I want to expect as a properties. So that we define in the component itself, right? So to validate the properties, basically we need to use PropTypes of your PropTypes is a properties for the component. So React component have a property called PropTypes which used to set of data type validation. So in order to perform prop validations, we have to use PropTypes modules in component, and this comes with PropTypes package that need to install. So basically we need to install a package called PropTypes in our React project. So then we can use a module called PropTypes in your component, and through this we can define the property types. Here the way we can install it, and this is one example of using PropTypes properties of a component. Here basically you can see, right, I have three properties expecting in employee details component, and ID is something like PropTypes.number is required. So whether it is required or not, that also you can specify. And there are plenty of data types it supported, like PropTypes is something we can access from this PropType module. Okay, and there are different data type it supported: number, strings, booleans, even function is also one type of validations here. Okay, and you can see, right, this ID and name is a required properties, whether contact number is something optional. So let me go back to BS Code once and I'll show you how this props works. So here is my component called employee list. Basically the expectation is I have a employees array. It has three properties: ID, name and contact number. So you can see, right, ID and name is there for all employees, whether the contact number is something optional. So it is undefined here, but in other cases it is present. So what I am doing here, like let me comment out this employee. So I am using that employees data, that is a JSON array basically, and initially I am assigning to a state, employees state. So by default it will load all the employees and it will pass as employees data to employee list. Okay, and also employee list expect two more elements apart from the employees data, is like on add click and on delete click. So these are the event basically I'm going to call. Basically it will work like a callback function for this component, and we pass three properties to employee list. So inside this employee list you can see, right, so I'm importing a module PropTypes from PropTypes package, and here as I said earlier, right, so there is a property called PropTypes for a component, and in that PropTypes I am defining what my properties are going to look like, right. So there is employee data. Employee data is like PropTypes.array of, because it's a array of object, right, and inside that array I am defining a shape in the sense it's a structure of object, how it is going to look like. So this has a few properties or few variables, you can say, inside the employee object, that ID, name and contact number. And here you can see, right, ID is required field, name is also required properties, but the contact number is something optional. Okay, and also I am defined that on add click is something it's a required function. So you can see, right, there is a function. So this is how we can define properties. Okay, so if I will render this component, how it will look. So inside that I have done some other things. So when I am getting a list of employees as the props employee data, and so I am iterating through the map. So map is basically if you want to do for loop kind of stuff, that we can use map. And here I am accessing one object and registering one employee details by passing this properties. Okay, these are like something ID, name and contact number. So whatever the objects data that I am getting here, I have defined those information I am passing along with props.onDeleteClick. Okay, so if you go to this employee details, inside that employee details I am expecting this 3-4 properties: ID, name and contact number and on delete click. So basically what I am doing, so I am using h5 tag, and one is my name is what is the employee name, and contact number is what is the contact number that we are seeing, and we are expecting a button. Okay, so now let's see how it is going to render. So you can see here, right, I had 3 employees in my list. If you will not pass this data as expected format, let's say I am expecting a number here, let's say, and if you pass some other character, then it will give you a console error saying like this particular data is not in a valid format. Okay, so now let's see the default values for props. So you can define default values for props by assigning the special default prop properties. Okay, so let me see the code. Right here you can see, so in my employee details I have these properties, and in these properties, like ID and name is like a required properties, but contact number and on delete click is something optional. So if it is optional, then what will happen? Let's say someone wants to use your employee details component, but they will only pass these two properties and they don't pass this contact number and this. Let's say someone wants to use your employee details component. So they don't need to pass this contact number or on delete click because it is optional. So, but they must have to pass ID and name. In that case also they can see the output because they are passing the mandatory property. So what will happen? There is a tightly coupled code written for a contact number if that is something not passed because it's optional field. So you have to define that particular optional properties default value. So there is a properties for a component called default props. So inside the default props you have to define what is the default values for your properties if nothing passed from the parent component as a properties. If the contact number is not present, then I am assigning contact number as NA. And on delete click event is not present. If someone is not passing as a properties, then I am just assigning a blank function, anonymous function. Okay. So now let's go back to the BS code again, and here you can see, right. So here the default prop is in employee list nothing I have defined, but in employee details I have declared some default values like contact number is NA and this. But if you see here, I have undefined, right, for employee name XYZ. So if you go to this rendered output, that you can see for XYZ the contact number is not present, but it is showing the default value NA. For other cases, whatever the contact number I am passing, that it is printing. So it is clear now. So now I want to add some employee from my details component. So basically whatever you are seeing here, this is actually details component, and this particular piece of code is like employee list component, right? So how can I add some dynamic data, right? So from the source where I am passing this employee data array, so in that place I will add one more item into this particular array, right? So how I can do that? So I can define a function here like on add employee, and in on add employee what I am basically doing here, so I am accessing this state employees and I am pushing one more element or one more employee that you can see, like ID is like employee length plus 1, and it's a dummy employee with the employee ID, right? And here you can see like set employees, I am passing the temporary employees. So what I am doing here, like if you see this on add employees, I am passing as a props. The props name is on add click. Okay, so this will work like a callback function. So when I will go to this employee list, and you must be seeing here there is a button called add employee, and in add employee I am calling the function props dot on add click when I am clicking on the button. You can see, right, on add click, and that on add click you can see here I am passing as a props. So if you go back to the browser, so when I am clicking on the add employee, that you can see it's adding a employee. Likewise, I am also passing one more of props on delete click. Basically here I am deleting a employee, and in on delete employee function I am expecting a parameter called ID. So what I am doing here, like I am filtering that list of employees where the ID is not equal to the ID I have passed, and I am setting that particular employees details into the state. So if you see the employee details here, so inside that employee list I am passing that on delete click properties, and there I am passing that props dot on delete click. Basically I am passing the parent function on delete click to my next component, right? In the employee details I have a button called delete. While clicking on the delete, I am calling the props dot on delete click and passing a parameter called the employee ID, props dot ID, right? So what it is happening, so when you are clicking on the delete button, it is coming to this the parent component, and it is triggering this on delete employee event. And here basically I am removing that particular employee ID and assigning that the new array into my state. Okay, so now see whether the delete is working fine or not. So if I click on delete, it is removed, right? Now I will remove PQR. Now I will remove XYZ. So this is how the add and delete things are working. And here you saw the example like how we have used a JSON array and passed those data as properties to the child component, and we manipulated that array by passing functions as props like add employees and delete employees, and we are calling back, or we are making a callback from child component that employee details to the employee list, and from the employee list we are calling to the source component where we are using employee list, and there we are manipulating the array. So this is how you can use the properties. Okay. So this is all about the session today, guys. Please subscribe my YouTube channel Techie Purna and follow me on Instagram Learn Full Stack. If you have any questions, please comments in the YouTube. I will definitely address those as soon as possible. Thank you, guys.